vaccinated, I heard as well. So we're ready for another stream from the UK. And we have a comeback. Joe's back from a couple of weeks ago. Time flies. But we had a bit of an interesting session where we went on a Lightroom kind of parallel tangent, and we just wanted to see more of you and actually dig into Premiere this time. So we're really excited to have you. Yeah, it's it's fun to be back. I'm hoping I'm not really a morning person, but I'm hoping to be a little bit more alive this time. So if I start waffling on, then just cut me in.
More. This is
12 o'clock.
12 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah. Time for Joe.
Yeah.
No, I definitely come alive at the evening.
We could do a special like 8 p.m. A Friday drinks, and have Joe actually fully alive.
Yeah,
that's right.
Who do we have in the chat today, Rufus? I haven't had a look. I think we have a lot of people
already here. There's Jonathan, there's PM, Kirsty, of course, Sandrine, our usuals. Tim is here, of course. He's always here in the background. Sometimes we hear him like, okay. Got to move there. Okay. There's Robert. There's Georgia, Jack, Harry, James, Jackie. Everybody's back here today. So thank you so much for joining us again for this. I think, what is this? Is this the 31st stream from the sofa?
I think so. Yeah.
31st stream from the sofa. Wow. Yeah, we're still here, and we're going to be here as long as it takes. Yeah. And and it's still from the sofa. I'm still here in my kitchen. Yeah.
Rufus, you're hiding this incredible view. You're the one who gets to experience it all, and you're keeping us prisoner from it.
Let's see if the chat wants a sneak peek of where I'm really at.
Yeah. I think you guys are going to have to ask in the chat, because Rufus is fooling us with some green screen magic. I'm just saying, but let's see later.
It's green screen. Yeah. Like the first 29 streams were literally from my kitchen, but not anymore.
There's some secrets happening. Right, guys. So what are we doing today, Joe? What are we actually going to dig into? And there's a lot going on. You're all set up. And Tim was very impressed already. We're chatting right before this. So go ahead. Tell us what we're going to cover.
So I've been working quite a lot on some of my title template designs for the videos that I produce. So if you're not aware of what I do, I produce videos online about travel photography. And one of the aspects that I like to bring back into my videos is my background in design. So I get a lot of enjoyment from setting designs for lower thirds and just animating titles. And I mean, I've been using like Adobe software for probably the best part of 15 years or so now. But After Effects is, I guess, the latest into my portfolio. I say latest, I've been using After Effects for the last 4 or 5 years, but I've now got to a point where I feel like I'm actually making huge progress and efficiencies in my workflow. So I've been redesigning and creating a new set of title designs that I'm pretty pleased with. And the last couple of weeks, I've been making huge progress on how some of them work, to the point that I actually rebuilt all of them from the ground up again. And yeah, I kind of want to share some of the design, how it comes about, and my process, my workflow, and hopefully you like the titles and the work.
Well, now is a great time. It's a great time to revisit things, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think I mentioned on my channel in 2018 that I was going to share some title designs, because I get a lot of comments about the designs. People always asking, where do I get them, and all that. And I say, well, I made them, like I didn't buy them for anywhere. But then I realized that there's probably a lot of people who are interested in getting them as well. And I've been saying that I'd release them for the best part of 2 years. And then I guess, yeah, since being at home and kind of having more time, I was like, okay, I really need to finish them. So it's, it's been a lengthy process, but I find that when I'm learning things, that's when I work my best. So I think I've been like flat out for the last 2 weeks, just doing 8-9 hours straight without really realizing it, forgetting to eat. And to me, that's a good sign that I'm in the flow of things and it's working well. So,
Joe,
yeah.
that's not a good sign. You need to eat. First rule. We're all struggling with this social distancing home setup, but sounds unhealthy. But that means we can see something today.
And also because the question arose in the chat. Yes, well, I'm based in Florence in Italy. Emma is in Berlin and Joe is in London. Right?
Yes, we got.
We are doing these streams with UK artists. So yeah, this is special for you from the UK.
Okay, so I guess if I start with the process, so in terms of where things actually begin, it's actually on paper. So I do a lot of sketches. This is going to be very bright, isn't it? Let me just turn that down. So I do a lot of sketches on sort of notebooks. I've got various different notebooks for things, but for the most part, brighten that up again. For the most part, the work sort of really starts on just getting something out as quick as possible. And in my sketches, I never really detail what the actual elements are. I just like to just block things. And like if it's a text, I'm not going to write anything. I'll just do a black rectangle. And that in itself ended up inspiring some of the designs. So from those sketches, I then eventually take them into Photoshop. And these have been a bit of an evolution of my designs over the last 2 years or so. If we open how they used to look originally.
So we were saying this last time, but it's so satisfying to look at. You're so organized. And I also want to say that I don't know if Tim, you can do this, but if you can share your last session, everyone can go and catch up and, pick it up from there after the stream, obviously. Stay here and then go back and have a bit of a flashback replay of the last session. But take it away.
Yeah, it's efficiencies and organization is definitely like a thing that I lean into. It's for me, it makes so much sense to allocate time to set things up and to put all my guidelines in place and to have everything organized and ready, because then when I need to do the creative work and the grunt work as such, it frees up the time. But also when you come to finalizing things, you're not finding silly errors and having to repeat yourself. So I definitely like workflow and doing those types of things. So it always makes me happy when people recognize that.
Is this just good habits that you put in place working with clients and kind of had from very early on, or?
Yeah, I think, I've always been organized in the way that I set up my digital life. I think I've had the benefit of growing up in an age like just at the turning point of when the internet and sort of like digital things started coming about. So I was kind of able to experience both the analog side of things and the digital side, but not be a complete technophobe about it, because I was at an age of kind of developing it. But then when I started working at companies and I was working with other people, then I realized I needed to step it up an even further step. And one thing that I always used to kind of say to myself is make your future self thank your past self. And it actually happened recently where I was going through some sort of footage, and I'm working on a project from archive video at the moment. And I just found this project file of all of my footage from a particular trip organized and just ready and waiting to be edited. And it was a load of footage I hadn't used. And it was brilliant because I just opened it and there I had an hour and a half worth of footage, because my past self had said, one day you'll need this.
So you're high-fiving like past Joe,
yeah.
Like nice one. Love that.
And it comes to, even with files and everything, of like labeling everything, like no layer goes unnamed. Everything is labeled, everything's organized. It's all into nice groups. I use layer comps for organizing everything in all my different visualizations. And if you're working with other people, not only are you helping yourself and your future self, but you're obviously helping your colleagues, because they can open things and they're going to see things and it's going to make sense. It's hard enough working with deadlines and pressures, and then having a learning curve of just understanding a file. So I set very strict sort of guidelines to myself on how I organize things. Everything's top down from a visibility perspective. And yeah, I'm very particular on those things, but I think it saves time in the future.
Rufus has already quoted you in the chat, so it's officially a thing. The past self, future self, written in the books.
Yeah. Anyway, so my title design. So I think I can show you actually how they looked. So let's do a Blue Peter moment of here's what we're going to make. Or rather, here's an example. So my title designs are very simple in the element of what actually appears on the screen. So I usually need to show something like an icon for like a location or a social network, some sort of main input such as the destination, and maybe a subtitle such as the region. So I might put, say, London, United Kingdom, and then any sort of supporting information that may appear. And that all comes into play.
It always cracks me up, like especially in American movies where it says Paris, France, or like Bangkok, Thailand.
Yeah, it's definitely a very like Jason Bourne. You sort of need it to patter on like a typewriter. But sorry, I'm showing you the wrong one. So my previous design used to look something a little like this. I hope you can see that on the screen. I've adjusted the resolution, so it's massive for me, but hopefully it looks okay for you guys. In fact, that color is actually a little bit distracting behind. Let me just put something like this. So yeah, my original design showed an icon that would bounce into screen, and then the text would randomize a little bit like an old destinations board from a train station. So yeah, it just bounces in, shows the title, and then randomizes away. And I've had that design for the last like 2 years or so. And over that time, I've tidied things up and changed the font and just kind of tightened things and got it looking how I want it to. But it came for a redesign, which is where, if we flip back to Photoshop, I wanted to create something that had more variety and more sort of character to things. So we ended up with this. So this, if I turn my guides off, this is kind of the basic sort of template of everything that could be available in my titles. So I've got icon options, main title, subtitle, and then like a sub tab to give even more relevance to things. And for the fans of layer comps, let me show you. So we've got, if you're not aware of layer comps, by the way, it's a way of organizing which layers you currently have active. You can use it for other things as well, such as which layer effect styles you want. So you're essentially saving a state, and it's a way of saying this document at this moment in time looks like this. So I've created a composition which essentially just has this group of layers active. And then within there, I have a smart object, and that smart object itself also has a load of layer comps. So this kind of shows it. We have icon block, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat. And all it's doing is just enabling which layers are active. So as we cycle through, it's a very easy way to get organized, rather than, you know, if you're previewing to a client and you say, oh, here's a version that looks like this, and then you go and you turn on the layers, and then you're like, okay, right, that looks like that. Now remember that, here's how it looks as this option.
One very cool thing with layer comps is that you can also turn them on and off in InDesign directly. So for those of you who are making layouts, it's so cool because you can take a complex Photoshop file into InDesign and then turn these layers on and off, you know, depending on what logo you need, without having to actually, you know, like have a gazillion different files you link to. So very useful.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is the smart object. If we go back to the preview, so that is my smart object here, and you can reference the smart objects layer comps within the parent file. So again, in the properties, you have all the different layer comps available. So I can change my composition externally from it. And like you said, in InDesign as well, that's a huge feature. And again, from here, one of the things that I love to do, so I've got all of these different layer comps for all my different designs that I want to create. I could select all of those and go to File, Export, Layer Comps to Files. And then I could export all of those layer comps in a variety of different file formats. And they just then exist as files. You don't have to save as, rename, and do all of those things. And the big benefit to this is if you go and update your design and you update, say, the type on something, the layer comp is still relevant because it's relative to the layer's visibility. So when you export it, it will just re-export that same layer visibility, and it overwrites what already exists. So you can just stay up to date. It's amazing. Anyway, that's a huge tangent on layer comps. I think it's a worthwhile thing to share. So yeah, the benefit with this sort of design is I wanted to create a way that I could have flexibility in saying, do I want everything shown, or do I want just the main title, subtitle, and the subtab? Do I want the icon but no subtab? So I wanted a way that could kind of build in, just be able to play with sort of color and sort of like theming of things. And that then transcended into a document here of, again, multiple different compositions of everything that I've been working on. But when I was thinking of how I wanted to share these, I thought, well, the colors that I use, they're not going to be relevant for everyone. So I need to create almost like a white label approach to things. And that spawned off further ideas of thinking, how can I theme these titles? And then we come into the fun activity of finding color. So
I love this. So beautiful.
There's therapy in looking at colors all at once, I swear. So yeah, organizing colors. And initially I was kind of just going a little bit extravagant. These aren't necessarily in order of how I created them. But I just started playing around and just tweaking them and adjusting them. And I thought there's probably a lot of people who would want to use these titles in, say, corporate environments, in which case they may not want colors like this, and they may want some more muted and natural ones. So we've just got some standard light, dark, and the other fun is naming them. So this one's charcoal. We've got, I think this is marine, battleship, uniform, lux green, and then we get into some of the more fun ones, like this one I've called shell suit. What's this one called? Something cream.
We should have named a new one. Oh, missed opportunity.
Yeah. This one here is called smart casual. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun naming all of these. But anyway, these titles, it just kind of shows that even from like a very simple design, it can go quite far, and you can take quite a lot from them. So if we now finally hop into After Effects, so I don't necessarily want to go through a tutorial as such of how I've built these, because that can go quite deep, but I can show an example of a basic one and how I create it into a template that can be used in Premiere. So I've got one open here. So is it easier if I turn that on? I turn my guides off. So this is I've called it Pop Tab, and it's just a very simple title design. You can just see the tab just pops from the bottom. And the idea here is that I'd create something where, I don't know, it would have like a small piece of information. So in my mind, I'm thinking this is great if you wanted to feature the year. So I could put in here 2020. And when I'm talking about something, if I'm showing archive footage, it's just like a nice little nod to a bit of information that's not too intrusive. But also, it would be nice to have this design in a variety of different formats. So rather than just in the lower left, maybe we could have it in the upper right and the lower right and other places. So one of the big things that I've learned and sort of developed in After Effects is the way that I think about structuring my files. So I don't necessarily think of them as artboards anymore. I actually think of After Effects in the same way that I think of building a website, where you have repeating components and you sort of reference them and use like a file structure to build them, rather than having an option that looks like this, another option that looks like that. And then if you change something, you realize you have to go and change it 2 or 3 times. If I can reduce the amount of times I'm repeating myself, then it makes up for a lot of time in the future. So in my in my layer stack here, I have a single composition, which is called Pop Tab Centered. And then I have 2 others. So I have another comp, which is a controller comp. And this is kind of a good practice to have, where you can have a particular composition that is used across all of your compositions. And within there, you have sort of global information. So within my controller, I have some further controls. And then that also references any other compositions that I want to go across everything. So think of this as like a single point of call. And then from there, because that's called across everything, if you need to add something at a later date, you can just add it to the controller and everything's there for future use. So from here, I pull in my theming document, and I may be able to go to this in a moment because there's quite a lot happening in here. If we go back to the original, from a very simple outset where it looks like we've got just 3 compositions, you can see it's pulling in more information and kind of growing from there as such. So again, back to this original Pop Tab. So this pulls in a composition called Pop Tab Centered. So this is actually the main basis for the composition. And the idea being that if I create this Pop Tab once and I create the animation once, all I need to do is move it around the screen, and therefore I can have varying formats for my title design. So it's a very simple animation. We just have a shape layer here, and we can see in the positioning, I've actually just got a little bit of a script in here that pulls it from, oh, sorry. It's linked from the actual text, so it's anchored to the text. So yeah, the animation just slides in, and there's a little bit of a bounce. If we go into the graph editor, click on position, you can actually see a more visual representation of what the numbers mean. I know After Effects can be quite daunting for people. You're seeing all this precision and numbers and everything. But using something like the graph editor, if we zoom in, it's actually a little bit of a kink in there. That's my bad. But you can see that the curvature of it shows the sort of acceleration of an animation. So it just kind of like flows it in nicely. And there's a little bit of an over jump. So if we zoom into, let's say 100%, you see that as it grows in, there's a little bit of an overstep, which just adds like a bit of character to the bounce. It's not a rigid jump into position. So yeah, the graph editor has been a great opportunity to sort of set those timings on things. And my base item is just parented to the text. So all my animation is controlled from a single place, which is the text moving, and then everything follows it because it's pinned to it. If we turn back off the graph.
And Joe, everyone's already mind blown. So you're taking this.
Okay.
Everyone in the chat is like, what is going on? This is amazing.
If I'm going too fast, I've got a lot that I want to share, but
I think it's it's very akin to using nested paragraph and character styles in InDesign or things. These are all organizational things that make your life so much easier. So if you guys like spend much time doing things like that, I would definitely watch this thing again, and like go through all the steps. But of course, don't be daunted by After Effects or Premiere, because there's some really neat stuff you can do without at first getting into this kind of depth. But this is so amazingly fascinating, Joe, that you go into the
Yeah, I kind of forgot I was doing a stream, if I'm honest. I was
you're just sort of do your thing,
running through talking.
Brilliant.
We've got time, and I'm hoping that I can kind of reiterate on some points. But if anything, I guess if I look back to the way that I learned all of this, it's learning through just watching someone do things, and you maybe pick up a few tips, but it's enough of a nugget of information to make you go and research further. Like one of the things I actually find myself consistently doing is I'm editing something, and then I just Command Tab to Safari, and I'm like, After Effects, how to, and then whatever particular thing that I'm doing. And I always find either articles or videos or other things. You watch that, you solve someone else's problem, and then you know how to solve your problem. So yeah, if I am going through too fast, hopefully there is something that you can take from it that just gives you a little bit of a inspiration of where to go and search for things. But yeah, a couple of things that really stood out to me was the graph editor. When I first discovered that, my mind was blown, because beforehand I was manually doing keyframes to sort of simulate a bounce, and I was having things like positioned myself and moving it, and then thinking, yeah, that kind of looks like it would accelerate, and this looks like it's not. But being able to do a graph editor and quite literally just drag things, if I wanted to make this bounce even more, I can just drag it down, and you see the bounce is now much greater. Or if I wanted to drag out the bounce, it's now much slower.
And one thing that's, that we're talking about organization now in the chat. And I think one of the things that that is super important with organization is that if anybody then asks you to correct something, it'll take you a second. And it won't take, instead of going back and like redoing everything, organization is really a killer feature of yourself. And it saves so much time in the long run. This is why, for example, I spend so much time in InDesign, like doing all of my paragraph styles, my character styles, choosing all of the colors, naming them, blah, blah, blah. And then if the client comes back and say, oh, I want everything different, you just go click and it's done.
I've just seen actually in the chat, someone said, I remember many keyframes in Flash to make a bouncing ball. That was very literally what I was doing. But yeah, it's InDesign with the paragraph styles. I mean, even if I have to send a letter, I'll do it in InDesign, because I want to be typographic on it and completely overkill. But yeah, it's style sheets and any sort of commonality across a document, it saves you so much time. And it only takes minimal effort from the very beginning. It's definitely worth looking into.
Everyone's just giving us so much banter today in the chat. I'm loving it. And Jonathan is asking if you label the items in your fridge.
No, but if you've seen my camera bag, everything is labeled with my name and what it is.
So it's not just digital, it goes into your real world as well. I love
Yeah.
it.
And that's an interesting point, because the design aspect of this came from my label maker, which is just a Dymo. I've actually, it's kind of funny, but it's right here.
Yep.
So yeah, just the standard label thing. So it just comes in like a little ribbon.
We're all like ordering this now. Like Joe said to do this. We need to.
And Sean says, "Oh my God, he's not using a coaster for his water."
Yeah.
Like, how you are?
Oh, guys.
Okay.
I love it. All right, let's get back into it.
Yeah. Right. Where was I? This little pop tab. So it's a very simple thing that just kind of that jumps in. But I had this idea that what if I could take this tab and rotate it around, so I can have an option for a top left, bottom left, and blah blah blah. So in order to do that, I needed to create some sort of, hold on, let me set this to fit. I needed to create some sort of methodology for that. So if we go back to my parent composition, and I have in here local control. So this is just, I think it's just it's on an adjustment layer. Okay. Yep. So on an adjustment layer, in my effects, I've just got a drop-down menu, and you can add these by right-clicking them and doing new. Where am I going wrong here? Sorry, where am I finding the, if in doubt, search? Expression controls, that's it, effect.
That's actually a very good tip. Can you show that again, Joe? Because when you don't find something in the menus, go to the help menu, start typing, and the Adobe applications will actually show you in what menu that thing is with a big arrow.
When you hover it, it's a very obvious, it was here. Yeah, so if we go into effect and expression controls, drop down menu control. This, Rufus, you may be the one to know this. This was added in the last year. Is that right?
I don't know.
No? Okay.
Oh, anyone in the chat knows?
What can I say? Yep.
Tim knows.
Yep. It's very, very helpful. So thank you, Adobe. Previously, we'd have like sliders and other things. And essentially, this is a way that you can have an effect or a controller within your composition. So you can see here, I've got this menu. And if we go into edit, you can essentially create options. And this is just in an index of 1, 2, 3, all the way to 6. So I've created options for top left, top center, blah, blah, blah.
And
so
Flynn
from this menu,
in the chat. Flynn is our host, Adobe Live host in Australia. So if you're watching the Australian streams, because there are Australian streams as well, yep, Flynn Tracy is the man.
I've actually been catching a few of the Aussie ones because I'm always up late working, so it suits my time zone. So yeah, this drop-down menu, it just gives you a quick way to set options. So again, similar to layer comps, and you can see a repeating theme here. So if I choose top left, you see my composition changes automatically. And it doesn't do that by itself, by the way. I've built that in place. So let me show you how that works. So if we go back to our composition here, you see it's doing one thing in particular, and that is simply rotating. Actually, sorry, I'm going ahead of myself. Let's go back. So if we go back to our pop tab center from the parent document, so I've changed my drop down, and all it's doing is in the position. If you option click on the stopwatch, you get the option to code and to add in information. Now, again, don't be frightened by the aspects of writing code. There's plenty of code that you can search on After Effects, and it is very simple language that you're able to write in. You can drag and drop things, so it can write the code for you to an extent. To this level, you will have to do some maths and work things out. But essentially what it's doing is it's saying, if this drop down is a particular state, then do this. And one of those things is if the drop down is set to a top left, top right, top center, then position up to a certain area. And likewise, if we go into our composition that is being referenced here, and on the rotation, I have a thing in here that says, if my drop down is selected to a certain thing, then rotate the text. Because obviously if I'm moving the tab around, I'm spinning it, then the text is going to be upside down. So I need to rotate that. And in essence, that is the very simple way. I know that was a very broad overlook, but that's a very simple way of having
This is a simple version.
options.
Everyone's like, really?
Options all over the place.
This is one I created before. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But here's where it gets really fun. So now that I've very briefly shown you kind of what's happening, not necessarily how it's happening, but what's happening. If I wanted to save this from After Effects so that I could use it in Premiere, we use the Essential Graphics panel. So if you don't have it open, again, you can just go to Window and Essential Graphics. I've pretty much always got it available here. And by default, it actually looks like, oh, I just deleted the wrong thing. By default, it looks like this. So the window is completely blank. And let me just show that. And you have all of your different compositions available to choose. So I've got my main parent composition, which is this one here that we've just been looking at. And from here, I'm literally able to drag and drop things into the Essential Graphics. So for example, in the Pop tab, which is the child element within here, if we open up the text layer and then open the text, source text, if you drag and drop it into there, you now have this available, and I can change the reference to it here. So I can say change here, and from here I could write a new piece of information. And you'll see that that's updated the text immediately. If we go back to our parent, it's there ready to go. So if I'm working on a design and the client needs to see something more than just placeholder text, I can add stuff in here. And there it is, nice and easy. In this case, this design was designed for something short, like the year. So this Essential Graphics is a very easy way to change elements of your design. And it's literally a case of just dragging and dropping compatible things. So I could add in other elements. So for example, if I wanted to put in the positioning, so I could drag and drop the anchor point. And now from here, I've just got availability to just drag and drop. And it's a way of simplifying which controls you want to have easy access to and potentially give them to someone else to change as well. So if we come back to our local controls, so I can drag in my menu and the design is there. nice and easy. So now I've got a very simple element here, and I could take it further. So with my, let's change that back to source text. So with my source text, I could even enable font selection. And now from here, I could change the font if I wanted to. So I could change that to something else. And this one is linked from Adobe Fonts. So we could go for a italicized one, maybe a heavy. And you'll notice that the design is just updating automatically. I'm not having to dig through my layers and change stuff. So this is a huge feature in After Effects alone. But you can take it to a more sort of template aspect if I then name this. So let's call this MOGRT sample. I set the poster time, which essentially is this thumbnail. So let's have it as top left. Set the poster time. So now that's a thumbnail option. And if I export this, save the document, and let's put this in here. Make sure to warn me if there's any errors or anything that's maybe not usable for people. I could add some keywords if I wanted. Click OK. That's now saved into my Creative Cloud libraries. If I go into Premiere and open my Essential Graphics and scroll down, I now have this available across all of my shared sort of applications. But for Premiere, I've now just dragged and dropped, and there is that title template design. It just pops in just there. But not only that, I've got the option to edit it. And this is the main feature of these titles, is that I've created something in After Effects, and I could now hand it off to someone else who doesn't use After Effects. And they can go and edit things, and they can only change what I've allowed them to change. So you can be the conductor on this and give certain controls to people or restrict certain controls. And it just makes it easy to give changes to things. And now I can focus on editing my video using a title that adjusts depending on what I put into here, and give people control on how they work. So that in itself is a massive feature. And you can see how just having that spark of an idea of how can I create these titles, how can I take them further, to the point where you can actually get very detailed on things where, which is one of my bigger ones. Let's show the original again.
Are you selling those as well, or?
I will be soon. I actually need to come up with a name for them. I've got a few ideas, but I'm unsure on what to sort of call them.
And will you be creating your own thing, or will you be using Adobe Stock or something like that? Because Adobe Stock like also specializing in selling these motion graphic templates.
Yeah, that's probably a good place to look. I do already have a digital store, but I'm open to putting them in various other places as well. Because yeah, with Adobe Stock, you have the opportunity to, if you're browsing, you can just search right from within. Yeah, it's a good option actually. So yeah, with these titles, you can these titles, you can take them quite far. So although this may appear to be a very simple, there's 3 parts or 4 parts to it. From within my essential graphics, I've built in controls for if I'm using a wide aspect ratio to adjust the position of things. So it just automatically pulls it into frame. So rather than dropping in the title and having to adjust my effect controls, I've just built a control because I knew that that's a control that I use a lot. I've built themes. So all of those designs that we saw on Photoshop, they now reference the colors based off of that main controller composition. And it says a case of like, for this color, take this element from this swatch in this composition. So therefore, again, I only have one file that's referencing all these extra things. And it's just this approach of thinking of how can you spot the areas where you're repeating yourself, but make it easier and make it more efficient. Because when you do come to repeat it, or if I decide that actually, you know what, I don't like the speed of this transition, I can change it once and it updates everywhere. I've got drop downs in here for different icon designs. I've put all the different main social media, and they just drop in nicely. If I want to change the style of the icon, so if it's like a tab style or the bounce, and they then just build in nicely and everything's there. Oh, it's going a bit slow because we're streaming. And it's controllable. Likewise, there are custom control options for the colors. So again, from After Effects, just like the way I dragged in the source text, I could also drag in the color element. And now for the colors. Someone's on the phone.
That's it, right?
And now for the colors, I can just click and you see, actually that was probably the wrong one to do. Let's do the base. So now if I had a particular theme for a project that I was working on, I could adjust that to match the branding of whatever project I'm on. All through just the drag and drop of the essential graphics. And you can organize them into groups as well. So if you want to tidy things up so that you're only focusing on one area, you can just open and close those. And yeah, now I appreciate there was a lot that I've just kind of shown through that. That was like an overview.
I hope we still
of
have
maybe,
everyone.
maybe
Everyone's
3 or 4 months worth.
And Joe, have you used any of these on any projects already, or it's just been like
yes,
still
so
fresh?
I use them in all of my video that I've been working on, but these particular designs, I've been teasing a few of them as I've been working on them. So they've gone into some videos on my channel, but the design themselves, they've kind of tightened up and I've improved on the colors and the flexibility. But yeah, that's one of the processes for how I've built these, is I'm personally using them. So I'm being the tester for, will it break in a particular area? I've even got spreadsheets for tracking the bug checks. So I know each title has about 11 different things that I need to make sure it works. You know, for example, what happens if you continuously type? Does it break it? Does it go off the screen? What happens if you say don't type anything? We want the tab to disappear. We don't want it to just be an empty green box, for example.
So you make them all fail-proof.
Yeah, pretty much. If someone's able to break it, then I know I haven't done enough work on it. So that's I guess I'm putting in the legwork on it to make it as easy as possible for those who are going to use them. And I think that's what should be done with title designs. If you're taking a template, it's a template for a reason, because it should be easy to be edited. It's just up to you if you're willing to learn the process of how it's done. And although it is daunting, it's a lot of fun. Can get very, very nerdy on it, but yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, guys in the chat, firstly, you know, Rufus is being told off, so very good on you. And and secondly, we have some people mentioning they'll have to watch it again. Please do. Everything's on replay, so you can kind of break it up step by step. Any other questions, Rufus? You've been.
Well, no, the thing is that these motion graphics templates are so cool because they are editable, they are so flexible, and yeah, and like if you don't have like the time or the or you don't just want to deal with making them, then there's people like Joe who actually create them, and he will soon be selling them. There's also some in your, directly available in your Creative Cloud libraries through Adobe Stock, and I'm sure there's other offerings as well around the web. So yeah, it's just a matter of making life easier. Yeah, and
yeah,
so cool.
I think the bug sheet, Excel sheet blows my mind because that's just a level of like granularity and like cleanliness that I haven't seen before. So it's so thorough in terms of your process, and yeah, and it's just also this understanding that this will pay off, right? Whether that's in a week's time or like past Joe 5 years ago who pulls off a project and realize that this worked, and it's just experience, right? So like the learning curve that, oh, I faced this mistake before and I'm just going to prepare for it. So that's it. I was about to ask, can I please see like what that looks like?
The spreadsheet,
it's also so nicely visually put together.
Let me zoom out a bit. So I was sharing this with a friend the other day, because again, one of the elements in here that is just a time saver is checkboxes. So this is we're in Google Sheets now. But I've just enabled a checkbox, and using conditional formatting, if the checkbox is set to true, i.e. it's been checked, then change the background color. So I can just click it once and it updates. And I've got all of my compositions referenced and all of the code names so that I understand in the document which one I'm looking at. And so far, everything's almost done. I've just got the last title that I'm working on, all the bug checking to make sure that the things work.
We need something like that, Emma, for Adobe Live, like.
I know, I'm not.
Photo has been sent. Zoom meeting has been created.
Phone is off. Check. No, this is brilliant, and some people are saying I draw a line at the Excel sheet. This is when I just kind of say enough. But we had someone asking, and I think you said this earlier, like how much time you're spending on these programs every day, right? Like you pretty much live and breathe your Premiere and After Effects, right?
Yeah, it's I guess I always feel quite fortunate that I've got multiple sort of like passions on things. So, depending on who I'm talking to, I'm either a photographer or a designer or a web developer or whatever. But the benefit of that is that I'm always interested. So my excitement at the moment is in After Effects hugely, and I've been spending hours and hours, probably maybe 10, 11 hours per day, just going through so much. That's what I meant earlier when I said that I forget to eat because I'm in the zone, and I have to be reminded, like, oh, it's dinner time. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, all right. And then as soon as I've finished, I'm eager to get back and work on things. But there are times when you get stuck, and there've been coding things that I've been working on and it's just not worked, and I'm spending a long time Googling, and I've just constantly got After Effects how-to in my clipboard, and I just go to Safari and I'm pasting After Effects how-to and then whatever my problem is.
Jonathan is saying he's designing a new tea. Be more Joe. Yep.
I'm loving you guys in the chat today. Honestly, you've just been so much fun.
Can you just show us like an application, like one of your recent videos you published or something, where you actually use these titles, or some form of them?
Sure.
Oh, and Tim says, when I will create a new document in Photoshop, I will ask myself, what would Joe do?
And Flynn said, came for design tips, stayed for the Google spreadsheet hacks.
And this is how legends are born, Joe. Yep.
Let's go to... Okay, so this is I think it's my most recent video on my channel. I think it's going to be muted. Let me just play it anyway. So first title we see is just my social interaction, sort of introduction, because quite often when you're doing video online, it's good practice to introduce yourself, and I always forget. So by having a lower third, just kind of say my name and Instagram username. And again, this is actually the old one. So you can see before the drop downs, I had to use opacity sliders. So I would say, instead of my avatar, and I would add my partner Ellie's or other ones, and then adding in the username or the icon. So at the moment we've got Instagram, and this was on opacity. So you can see that I've refined the new version to be drop downs, and it's a better fail safe, because you can never, with a drop down, you can never have two active at the same time. Whereas with the opacity in the old version, it was a bit problematic. And I think it was reasons like that that held me back from releasing titles until I could fix those issues, because I just knew that the usability factor just wasn't there yet. So yeah, that's the first title. Second one is just a little, I call this one the flyover text. So you see the box just grows over the text and then fades away. Very subtle. This is a big, what's this called? The big randomizer, I think. So yeah, builds in the randomization, little banner that comes across. So in this particular video, I'm talking about a project I'm working on, which is going through my archive of video footage. So there are various sort of chapters within this, and that's where the titles really help to keep the focus and the narrative throughout. And again, I can have little title designs that show sort of topics that I'm talking about, but the video is still focused on the present. And then, yeah, I think I only used about 3 or 4 different templates within this. But without the titles, watching the video, it becomes very sort of boring, because you don't have those extra little tweaks of visual interest. So they really do help.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And do you also use some sound design? Like, is that something that you're into as well? Like to give your videos an extra layer?
Yeah. So I'm one of my major focuses with video over the last couple of years has been audio. For one, getting as best an audio I can on vocals and everything, because you can live with video that's maybe not up to scratch, but if the audio is bad, it makes you want to click off so badly. And having everything maintained and leveled, and that's definitely a big focus. And likewise, if I'm filming sort of ambience and location, I'll always make sure to get pure audio, even if I may just end up overlaying with music in the case of this particular one. But for people around me, if I'm on a trip with other people, I have to be that guy to be like, sorry, can you just be quiet for 10 seconds so I can get the good audio? And sometimes that gets repeated in other areas of the video, irrelevant to what the actual video is showing. I'm taking the audio and placing it to kind of like build up a good library of sound, I guess. But yeah, video is, as with most art, it's all about layers. You can start with a base product, and you may, and I feel this a lot actually, you can feel disheartened that you've gone to the effort of filming something, of talking to camera, and it just feels flat. It's just missing so much detail. But when you layer up and you add texture to things, and you just kind of bring in other elements, they can be small elements, but when you bring those in, somehow it all comes to life. And then you see what is essentially the first edit with none of those layers, and then the last edit, which is, in terms of the narrative and what you're saying, is not much different. With those layers, it adds so much detail. And yeah, you just keep building and building. I mean, this is a very basic talking head video, but you can see that there are a lot of elements in my timeline, just everything kind of all shown. Sorry, it's
and Joe, we have a final couple of questions as well. People asking release dates, also where they can find all this content. So you have a YouTube channel that we'll have to put in the chat as well. Because we have over 1,000 people watching, and that's amazing for Monday, who are just joining us and who have just been keeping up with this process. I mean, good on you, because it's been really mind-blowing. So can you answer a couple of those questions as well? So
sure.
Release, and from Ali's asking, and also the YouTube channel. Thanks, Tim, for putting that in. Yeah.
So I'm looking to release these as soon as I can. Like I'm very, very nearly there. As I said, I need to come up with a name for them. And I know for most people, you'd be like, I don't care about the name. Let's just have them now. But from a business perspective, I need to be able to market them and kind of have them recognizable. So that's one thing that's kind of holding me back a little bit, but I've got a few ideas and I think I'm close. And then I'm also piecing together the documentation for how they work, so that if you do get them, you're not left in the dark. You're not just going to open them and think, how do I install it? What do I do? So perhaps that would be another thing to run through, because that's all going to be in InDesign. It's going to be a document of kind of examples of how they may best work, all the different theme options, and kind of some sample content, I guess. But I think I'm very close. Within 2 weeks, I think, of a release date.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I thought maybe after the summer or early 2021, you know.
No.
It's very close. I have been working on these. I mean, the original design started in 2017, and I've been tweaking and whatever. But the last 2 months is when I've really put in the huge majority of the bulk work. And it's so true that the vast majority of the work is only catering for about the last 10% of a project, and that's where all your time is spent.
Yeah, that's right.
But I live for that time. I love it so much. I love the finesse of things.
And because there's so many people in the chat right now, I think it's a good moment also to remind everybody that the conversation in between streams goes on our Discord. We have a specific one here for our UK crowd, so please join. It's down below us in the description for the video. And also, this is our 31st stream from the sofa since this new normal all began, and we're going to be continuing to do them, yes, until there is going to be another new normal. But yeah, I'm so glad that we can all hang out together here as a creative community with UK artists. I'm really humbled by how many of you are actually joining us every day. So thank you. Emma, over to you.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And I also want to say thanks, Joe, because you're so hardworking and honestly inspired everyone today as well. And people are already asking when you're coming back. So this is always a good sign, right? We always want to see more.
Be back.
That's brilliant. We'd love to have you again. And honestly, I had such a great time. Was there any final words from you and anything you wanted to share?
I guess, I mean, I feel like I did run through very fast on a lot of things. So I just want to, again, apologize if I went too fast on stuff. But my main thing is I always want to inspire people to get creative and make something. So if there's been any sort of little piece of information that's really sparked an interest, then I hope it takes you somewhere, because that happened to me many years ago on various different things. And I can still remember the moments of particular videos I've watched from people that started certain journeys. So if there is anything you've taken from this, I really hope that it's inspiring, at least, to make you want to go and learn something, because these tools are phenomenal. And we just have them at our disposal. So definitely. And
always ask yourself, what would Joe do? This is the lesson for today. We'll see you all tomorrow for another live stream from 12 to 1. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.